I'd like our panelists to come on up now, and I'm going to introduce them. Thanks, everyone. First is Devontae Jackson. Will be over on your left. He's from Winston-Salem. He currently is working in ministry and is an advocate for the transgender community. Next is Julie Wood. She also lives and works in Winston-Salem. She is active in a number of LGBTQ faith advocacy organizations, including Reconciling Ministries and Believe Out Loud. She is also is active in suicide prevention efforts through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and Out of the Darkness Walks. Next is Amanda Kerr. She originally is from Charlotte and is currently pursuing her Master's of Divinity at Wake Forest University School of Divinity. Amanda is passionate about the intersectionality of faith, race, gender, and sexuality. She is also dedicated to helping faith communities become healthier and more affirming spaces for the LGBTQ community. Ron Danley is from Elkin. He is self-employed and has been for the last 18 years. He grew up in Surrey County and left when he was 18 years old and moved back at age 42. He is co-chair of Northwest Equality, which is an ENC affiliate that is working in Surrey, Yadkin, Wilkes, and Allegheny counties. Give our panelists a round of applause. And I'm going to start off first by asking each panelist, and we'll begin with you, Devontae, just to tell us a little something off the bio sheet, something that you enjoy, some aspect of you, that we can just get to know you a little better.
Something I enjoy? Working in the community, but a little about me, I'm like a go-getter, especially in the faith community, because I was scared off by church. I grew up Pentecostal with a swift kick of holiness, so that was very interesting for me growing up, and I ran as fast as I could. But now I find my calling coming back, so I just, like working in the community, so that's me.
Hi, I'm Julie. My husband and I have been involved in church our whole life. I'm even a preacher's kid. We had this amazing little boy, and he experienced a lot of bullying from really a young age. But as he went to middle school and started high school, he really found his safe place in the youth group. There was a change in youth leaders, and a new leader came who had a different point of view. And Ben was actually put in a circle, outed as gay, and told he didn't deserve to be there. He was told he'd go to hell. His friends were pressured to raise their hand that they knew he would go to hell. We had, I used to say he's risen above all his sad events of childhood. And he went to Asheville for school, for college, and I thought, oh, he found his place. And he did. But the insidious harm of abuse, it doesn't go away. And anyway, on the anniversary, first anniversary of Amendment 1, which also gave the message of you're not worthy, you don't belong, he died by suicide. With all my heart, I want this message to change and to tell people you're a beautiful creation. If we believe in God the Creator, then we believe each is beautiful.
Hi, my name is Amanda Kerr. Like they said, I'm a student here in the master's program at Wake. And I grew up in a more conservative Christian tradition, and really up until about 2 or 3 years ago viewed my sexual orientation as gay as a sin, or as my cross to bear, or as the way I proved that I could love God through this sacrifice. And I struggled deeply with mental health issues and thoughts of suicide, and it was through a number of amazing experiences, and actually my relationship with God, that I felt led that I could potentially experience abundant life by being authentic. And so the struggles of this journey for me have primarily been coming out with my family, who's still a part of a more conservative tradition. And while this is a really difficult journey, I know that it's worth it, because I know that a lot of families, this is really hard, because at this point, sometimes I think the church is what stands in between families and their kids. Families have a desire for love and for reconciliation and acceptance, but they're told by the church that that is not the faithful response. So that's what I'm passionate about. And if you want something off the wall, I also like Frisbee, so if we want to add a light component in there, but I'm excited to be here.
My name is Ron Danley. I grew up just outside of Mount Airy area. Moved away when I was 18, couldn't wait to see this place in my rearview mirror fast enough. Traveled to Florida, ended up settling in Raleigh, was there for about 17 years, and then because of my parents decided to move back to the area. I had already been involved in Raleigh or Charlotte or even South Florida when I lived there in fighting for equality, as well as political people that I supported who supported the LGBT community. And then when I moved back to Surrey County, I realized it was exactly the same way as it was when I left it 23 years before, basically. I've never really had a problem with discrimination for being gay. Brent and I have talked about that. I don't really fit into a mold. I'm not effeminate. I don't have a stereotypical job. I own a construction company. And I've never really, even though I've been out since I was basically 14 years old, never experienced bullying personally. I've experienced it through my friends who were not as masculine, who were beat up and bullied. I actually became kind of like the protector in high school in a way, and protected my friends. And in some ways, I'm still trying to do that. After moving back to Elkin, I saw a huge need for us to attack a deep-rooted problem in this rural area where I live. And it's got to start with the churches and getting the folks who faith is important to. I was brought up in church. I was immersed in it my entire life. The day I turned 16 years old, I told my mom I would never go to church with her again, and I didn't. So faith to me is not as important as it is to some of the other friends that I have, because it didn't affect me the same way as it did them. I see them hurting. I see them turning to drugs. I see them being shunned by their families for all the same things that I was scared of as a child, but thank God it didn't happen to me. So I am, here tonight to hopefully help create more dialogue, to help us figure out a way to go, to help reach out to faith leaders of all religions, to get them to at least talk about it, and talk about it in a way that's not demeaning, or ends ultimately in it's still a sin, just finding acceptance. So, thank you.
I'm going to ask one more question of each panelist, and then we'll open it up to the audience. And Ron, I want to go back to you. We're in the space this evening. You can walk back to the restroom and you'll see that they're gender-neutral restrooms here at this beautiful facility that we're in. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that might look like in Elkin, North Carolina, and the differences that you see between rural areas and some of the more urban areas?
Yep. Well, obviously, you would never see transgender restroom, number one. It would be, even in their best abilities, would be called a changing room or a family restroom or something like that they would probably be more comfortable with. I can say that in Elkin, in those areas, our municipalities in Elkin itself are not bad. In Mount Airy, they're not bad. They're more welcoming. But our county commissioners are very far right on this issue, even so far as to refuse to accept or send any payments anymore through PayPal after they pulled out of Charlotte after HB2. So any vendors that accepted PayPal were now banned from being vendors with the county. So it was pretty deep-seated. So you're not going to see those restrooms there like you would here. There's the lack of people, I guess, that's there demanding it. And I hate to say this, but you don't see a lot of transgender people coming out to events in Elkin for that reason, for fear of, being called out or made fun of. You just never know what's going to happen. I hate to say it, but there's this overrun with ignorance and lack of understanding in that area, which is why I think it's going to make it very hard for us as a group focusing on Wilkes, Surrey, Yadkin, and Allegheny counties to make a difference without the help of the church leadership. These folks that are so anti are not always the smartest people around. They don't go to things like this. They don't even socialize, really. Their only social life that they have, which was just like mine as a child. And one of the reasons why I'm still such a proponent of church is because in my childhood, church was not all bad. There were good parts too. They helped our family. We were very poor. Church is the only outlet we had as a kid. It was our social life. And so reaching out to the spiritual leaders across the board and even putting some pressure on some of the more conservative groups, like the Holiness that you grew up with and the Pentecostals and stuff, who are so loud about this issue, putting pressure on them, finding a way to reach across the aisle, even if it's to help them see the loss of life through the suicides that are going on. Those numbers that he gave are staggering. But, one thing that I noticed among all of us is suicide growing up. Suicide was like my friend. It was like my go-to friend. I thought about it weekly. And it had nothing to do with being bullied. It was all to do with just not being accepted for who I was. And so you don't see a lot of progress in Elkin right now. They're trying. Our Chamber of Commerce is taking us in as a member, as an equality group. We have people within our government in Elkin in this area, but for the most part, you don't see a lot changing right now. I live on a very busy street in Elkin, and I will say that every Saturday and Sunday, I don't even sit on my front porch anymore. Simply, I go to the back now because it's just a parade of Confederate flags and don't tread on me flags and all of this stuff going up and down the road. It is a problem. It's a problem that there's so much pride built around discrimination where we live. And, that's why I'm here. I'm not really sure how to attack it because of my lack of relationship with some of the churches, and I'm still new back in Elkin, only 2 years. I'm still developing those relationships to help, bring that to the forefront. But we're also doing subtle things there. You know, we, at our tent and things that we've done, we have small pride flags and equality stuff out. And I mean, we're doing our best to make change, but not create a tsunami, if that makes sense, because there's so much hate that's still there that I don't think that has even been tapped into there. That I think if, you know, with HB2, it has brought a lot to the forefront, but it's just, you don't see gay life there. It's there, it's just very well hidden.
Thank you, Ron. And you mentioned something there I want to go to Amanda with. You said building pride around discrimination. But what about when we build a religious and moral stamp of approval around that discrimination? Not only the discrimination, but the hostility. And we lift that up there as something godly. Amanda, can you talk about the unique challenges that type of oppression causes young people in particular?
Yeah, well, kind of like I said in my opening statement, I really do feel like, at least in my situation and several other friends that I have that are also in the LGBTQ community, that the church is often what is standing in between them and experiences of healing. Whether that is in society at large, we can see the religious influence on legislation such as HB2, or whether that's in the relationships with their family, where families are told, you cannot be a member of this church and go to your son or daughter's wedding, or you cannot serve and be a deacon here if you accept your LGBTQ son or daughter. And just in some ways, the manipulation that's present in tying being cisgendered or heterosexual with salvation or acceptance or belonging to a faith community, and just what that does to one's mental state and the level of shame and embarrassment, mental health, view of self, all of these things. And then I think what all of that internalization does of self-hatred to then one's life and then those relationships. I was in a number of unhealthy, almost emotionally dependent gay relationships because they were having to be secret, and my being gay wasn't something I could be honest about. So therefore, it led to actually unhealthy ways. Instead of being able to be honest and being able to experience life and relationships and faith communities in healthy ways. So actually, this suppression and this negativity leads to a very unhealthy life, whereas there's so much health for LGBTQ people to experience. I think one thing that's present here in Winston-Salem that I've kind of been following recently are some changes within HUD, which is, I wrote it down because I just say the abbreviation, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So up until recently, a lot of churches partner with HUD to provide overflow shelter and homeless shelters. And recently, it was kind of like the shelter or the church's rules in terms of you can get services here, but you have to go by these standards. You have to fit A, B, C, and D. And just recently, HUD said in order to get funding, you have to provide fair and equal treatment to transgender people. And right now, you have conservative churches that are pushing back on that because these people don't fit within their guidelines, and they aren't going to fit in these boxes, and that they don't want to accommodate this. And there has been real conversation from some different faith communities that we don't have transgender people in Winston-Salem. I never see them. You're creating a problem, or you're creating something that isn't real. And so just seeing how even providing real services and just how that gets just all tied up with religious belief is a problem. But like we've said, there's some dark sides to HB2 and civil legislation, but I'm really thankful for how these conversations are making events like this possible, and it's drawing awareness so that now an organization like HUD is making sure that there is fair and equal treatment of trans people.
Thank you, Amanda. Julie, you heard Robert talk about a level of incompetency sometimes in segments of the mental health provider system. And I know that you work in efforts of suicide prevention. Can you share some thoughts on that? And if any of those came from your experiences with Ben?
We were fortunate to have some positive support in that area, but oh my goodness, I can only imagine the heaped-on effect if you did not have an affirming therapist and who was not educated and made assumptions without really understanding just the walking in someone else's shoes. I think I heard every time there's a bullying or a labeling, that child, that kid's twice as likely to die by suicide. Then it happens again. It's just, like in our case, here there had been the incidents at school. Ben wouldn't even drink at breakfast in the morning so he could avoid the bathroom because he did not feel safe. We're both social workers. We were advocates. We were there. We could not find a safe place. Our safe place then betrayed us. If you were to go then to a therapist to help tease all that out and process the feelings, and they affirmed, oh my goodness, I think the struggle is to keep hope and to find that flicker of I'm okay. I'm okay just the way God made me. And if you didn't get it there, I think the hill would be even steeper. I think it's critical. And I think the church has, tremendous responsibility. Also, our politics and our government, messages are being sent. Life honoring or life stealing messages. And sometimes it's used to justify just really mean behavior. But with that justification, sometimes people feel free rein and they feel better. And somehow I think there's an ego feed there. But no, the mental health professionals, what a critical role they have, and the responsibility of the words that come out of their mouth and the authenticity of their care is huge. Truly, lives depend on it.
Thank you. Devontae, according to some of those that Amanda had talked with, I suppose you're not supposed to be sitting there. We're not supposed to see you. Devontae, could you share a little bit about the ministry that you do and what that means to you?
So I started off performing as an MI, and then I transitioned. And I thought for a long time I didn't quite fit in because I went from female to male. And so everybody just kind of looked at me. And so I continued doing that, but as I did that, I shared my experiences with other entertainers in the bar and just kind of dove into a bar ministry because, most people, they think that, you can't go to a bar on Saturday night and then go to church on Sunday. And that's the number one question that I get. And my reply is always, God told me, come as you are. Eventually you're going to find something. And it takes some people longer. It took me, to realize that it was okay, because I would definitely try to sneak in the bar and, hide and not take pictures because I didn't want them posted on Facebook, or back then it was MySpace. But I kept doing it, and I'm still doing it because, what I've learned is God wants us to meet people where they are. And, we have to be the hands and feet. We have to do his work, and it doesn't matter where it is. It can be in the middle of the street, it could be in the bar, it doesn't matter. But I think the one thing that I hear is that the leaders in the faith community are not stepping up because they judge the people that go to bars. They judge the people that have a drink and then come to church on Sundays. So I'm kind of that buffer right now, and I'm trying to figure out which way God want me to go with it. I just think that we all need to come together. It's not just one or two or, faith leaders here or there. It's everybody that the judging needs to stop, because obviously God is our only judge. It's my opinion and my opinion only. But I also think that trans people, and I can speak for myself because a couple of years ago, before I even started my transition, I was scared to. And I was scared to because I see a lot of trans people just leaving. They have their transition and then they disappear. And that's why you don't see a lot of trans faces around, is because they get the treatment that they get from not only the faith community, but they get it from outsiders. And I'll be honest with you, when I had my top surgery, I looked at my wife and said, we're never going back out in public again, because of some of the ridicule that I got. She got looked at, and not only did we get looked at because of my transition, but we got looked at because she's white and I'm black. So we get a lot of that. And then them trying to figure out if I'm female or male, and the criticism that comes from that, and that ties into suicide and all that, because I can't sit here and say that I didn't think about it. My support system was a little bit better, I think, than most. And I was lucky, because I feel, I guess I feel so bad that I can't help everybody. And that's where I want to be, and that's where, I want to get the education out there and be the hands and feet that God wants us to be, to help everybody. And so, that's what it means to me. I'm very passionate about it, especially getting into the youth part of it now, because I think the light came on for me. There was a 12-year-old boy named Justin, who is now Julia, that I actually got a call from. It was my first experience. And he was about to take his life because his mother didn't understand what was going on. She didn't have that knowledge. And I went and sat in their backyard with them and her and tried my best to explain to her. And now they have the best relationship, and Justin is now transitioning into Julia. But I could sit down and imagine 100 more ways that could have went had I not done that. And I think that's why education is the most important thing, is educating.